Hello and welcome back. I am here with my wonderful friend Tracy.
Aw, I'm here with my delightful friend Amber.
And this is the road to Valon. Today is all about Ishamael, as Tracy likes to call him.
Her voice, always. I've been walking around.
Whose voice?
Is it Dana? Dina? She's the innkeeper or barkeeper at the one inn that Matt and Rand stop at in the TV show. And at the end of it, she has this moment where she's like talking about Ishamael, and she's like, and 3,000 years later, we remember his name, Ishamael. And the way she says it, it's been in my head all day. Stupid.
All day. Stupid. So, before we jump into it, the first half of this episode will be like relatively spoiler-free. And then after that, we are jumping into the deep dive, big spoilery bits. And I guess we should start off with Ishamael, the spoiler-free background info.
Yeah. Like he's, as we know him in the series as Ishamael, he's like the big baddie.
He does have the very stereotypical big epic fantasy baddie vibe. Like when he is introduced into the story, prologue of Eye of the World, you're like, okay, he's obviously the one that we need to be looking out for. He's the most menacing, I feel like, of all of the people in the first book, especially coming from that prologue, because a lot of bits and pieces are dropped in there. But the bigger meaning behind what he's saying in the prologue isn't fully developed until further on through the story. So you get these pieces and you're like, who the hell is this guy?
And who's the other guy?
Why should we care about him?
Yeah. Exactly. Almost in some ways, I think we get how Ishamael sees himself in that prologue, where he puts himself as like the guy against the dragon. And it's almost like he's chosen himself to be the champion of the dark, the way that the pattern pushes out the dragon reborn to fight for the light. And I find it interesting that it's like something he's kind of assigned to himself in some ways. At least that's like how it feels to me for so much of the storyline.
Yeah, because he's, from what we know, he's arguably the first to join the side of the shadow. And we don't get a lot of information about the Age of Legends when we get his backstory. Like, there's bits and pieces here and there. But what's most interesting about Ishamael, or Elan, which is his real name, his first name, I guess.
The Forsaken Tenderoni.
Yes.
That's who it is.
Yes. It's that due to his background and his job and his beliefs, he's the one who decided, hey, look, I think it's probably best if I join the other side here, or this other entity. I don't really want to call it a side, because it's almost like a feeling of spirituality. Like, there's not religion in this world, but there is a definite universal belief in the pattern and the creator and being reborn. So, like, there's no real, I'm doing air quotes, religion, but just this universal idea that is accepted by everyone in this world.
So one of the things that I pulled about Ishamael during the Age of Legends, while he is Elan, is that he is a renowned theologian and philosopher. And
yes,
I want to know what religion he's studying. Is it a contemporary religion? Is it a historic religion? Like, I'm just really curious about that, because we really, like you said, there's no real religion, quote unquote, in the Wheel of Time in the age that we're reading in. So I'm like, what is it that he's studying that like is influencing what his writings are?
Do you think that it's probably just this universal truth that they believe in the Wheel of Time, that
Mm-hmm.
there is a creator and that souls are respun and there's the great pattern of the wheel of time. So
Mm-hmm.
I would assume personally that he's just studying this, how it works, what are the truths of this? How do we
Yeah.
know for real? And if there is a side of, if there is a creator, then there has to be the other side of that,
Mm-hmm.
two heads of the coin here. And maybe that's what he's focusing on.
Well, I think you are absolutely correct, especially when you look at the titles of these books. Robert Jordan does such a good job of creating characters that he's even like, these are the titles of the books this guy has written. But it says so much about him where, okay, so it's analysis of perceived meaning, reality in the absence of meaning, and the disassembly of reason. These are like the three main titles that he is as Elan before becoming Ishamael. He is renowned among certain circles for his train of thinking that he's put into these publications. And it's just really interesting how he takes this and twists it all around and is like, oh, you know what? At some point, the dark one is going to win. I think that's the side I want to be on. He just has to win once. I'm going to hang out over there.
Yeah, he definitely has this almost nihilistic approach to
Mm-hmm.
things
Yeah.
where like does anything actually mean anything at all? Like is there any point to this? And we know that during the first signs of the breakdown during the Age of Legends, so like these first moments where we start seeing signs of upheaval, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
he's the one who's assigning himself to the side of the dark. And he's
Mm-hmm.
almost this person who I want to say stages like a an announcement almost
Mm.
like
Mm-hmm.
I am turning to this side because this makes sense and he has
Mm-hmm.
his reasons for doing it. And it's his belief that the war between the Shadow and Luz Theron has gone on for an infinite amount of times,
Yeah.
and he's theorized that Luz Theron has succumbed to the dark before, and
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the reasons why he's trying to influence him and not only beat Luz Theron, but
Mm-hmm.
just pull him to the side of the dark really, really hard. Like, this is his way out,
Mm-hmm.
his way of creating an end to this eternal spinning of the wheel, I guess.
Yeah. It's just intriguing how he gets to this thought process that there's this whole big thought process that goes into who he is, who he becomes. And when you were talking about how he like orchestrates his announcement, like he does it at some sort of like conference where there are people who are coming together to try to address riots, famine, the insecurity of the time period that they're living through. And so he comes in and is like, so yeah, guys, not so much for me anymore. And it kicks off more riots. And so, like, even just his announcement is this almost score for the Dark One. More chaos, more riots, more instability, just by standing up and being like, not so much, not my thing anymore.
Yeah, and him doing this leads to others following him because he is such
Yeah.
an influential person. We
Yes.
talk about in the Age of Legends, if you're somebody who's important, someone who
Mm-hmm.
has status,
Mm.
then you're afforded these three names,
Mm-hmm.
which he has. So
Mm-hmm.
we know that he's an important person.
Yeah.
And him having this announcement is just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think of someone who is really influential in our time, like just someone who everyone universally believes is a genius. Like it would be like, I'm trying
Oh
to
man.
think Stephen Hawking's or something,
Okay.
being
Yeah.
like, look, like there is evidence that this is what's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
from this moment on, this is like my life's intention, like doing this. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is what makes sense. So follow me.
Mm-hmm. And people would. And it was the same effect on these people living through this breakdown in the Age of Legends. I mean, I'm just thinking about it like someone that smart calmly standing up and being like, all signs point to this. I can totally see where people would be like, okay. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe he's got something. I mean, again, like back to the TV show with Dina, where she's like, we want to break the wheel to make the world better. Or just maybe not even better, to change it. Because
Yeah.
there's really no assumption that it's going to be better. And for Ishamael, I think it's the destruction part that he's looking for.
I also think it's an end of suffering for a lot of people because
Yeah.
at this point in the Age of Legends, we're seeing these first moments of this time period kind of like breaking apart
Mm-hmm.
in a time where there is, from what we know, it's supposed to be almost a perfect idyllic society.
Mm-hmm.
When things start going wrong, I could imagine that it would be very confusing and very chaotic for people
Mm-hmm.
who have never gone through tragedy or want
Yeah.
or need
Mm-hmm.
for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see all of these problems rising and you're like, hey, this is the answer, this is the way out, I'm sure
Yeah.
people are going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, like
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
And then when we see in specifically in the TV show, which I love that they did this, I think this is one of my favorite lore drops within the show because it made so much sense to me,
Mm-hmm.
is Dana being like, this life, this, this place that we're living, it's just one day after the next. It's dark, it's, people are suffering,
Yeah.
we're tired of it.
Yeah.
And in Ishamael's case, he was tired of being spit back out. He didn't want to be reborn. He doesn't want to go through this
Mm-hmm.
eternal spitting out of the souls by the great pattern. And
Mm-hmm.
so the only way that he can think to fix this is for the side of the dark, the side of the shadow, to win, to end it.
Oof. That was really well explained.
I think so too. I think
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
too. The
thank
show
you.
did a great job. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you mean me?
No, the way that
I
the way
thought
that
you
you
meant
summed it up.
I thought you meant that was really well done in the show and I was like, I know, right? Uh,
I mean, you can say that about your own intelligence too, and I'm totally down for it. But yeah.
oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. In both cases, I agree with you. And I think it also does a good job of setting up the fact that, like, the dragon and this Forsaken in particular are going to be like our head on head battle that we're going to be driving towards.
Yeah, he's definitely the adversary of Luz Theron
Mm-hmm.
and the reborn
Big time.
version of Luz Theron.
Right.
We have this, whole school of thought. We have Ishamael doing his thing, and
Mm-hmm.
then we have the strike on Shale Ghul. We
Yep.
have Luther and Telamon and his 100-ish companions, male companions, who strike at the
Mm-hmm.
Dark One and seal the bore.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we get that information and it's like, but wait, there's more.
Right. Right. In my notes, I think I wrote it in as, let's see here, sealed, half sealed, not sealed at all.
Yes. And I love this so much because I don't think it is something that a lot of people commonly know who
Yeah.
read the series.
Yeah. I didn't. This is one of those parts where, like, Ishamael gets a lot of questions from me because we at least know that he has an influence in the world in a way that none of the other Forsaken do. And I don't really know if we ever get a real full explanation for it in the book series, why this happens. And so I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah. So let's explain that a little bit deeper. So it is a general thought. It is believed that Ishamael was only partially trapped in the
Right.
seal on the boar. So this
Right.
allows him to influence the world in ways that the other Forsaken cannot. And
Mm-hmm.
the only real evidence that we have of that in world is that there are some manuscripts that survived since the seal on the board, that there
Mm-hmm.
are sightings and
Mm-hmm.
encounters with Ishamael, which
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be allowed to happen if he's
Mm-hmm.
nice and neatly tucked away in the boar with the
Yes.
seal.
Yes. Yep.
So, this writer of said manuscripts was a man named Aaron, son of Milan, son of Sinar. The name alone makes me think it was an Ogier,
Same. Yeah.
and born in 50 AB. So that's 50 years after the breaking. This
Mm-hmm.
man, who was considered a writer of very strict honesty, put together this manuscript, and there's only,
Yep.
torn pieces, just like the bare minimum
Mm-hmm.
amount of words written that survived till what we see in our timeline in the eye of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But these documents hint that there's this thesis by this, I'm guessing, Ogier, but then there are also interviews of
Mm-hmm.
others that are supporting his idea, because a number of dark friends thought at the time that they were interviewed that they have received personal instructions
Mm-hmm.
from Ishamael. So
Mm-hmm. Which
again,
shouldn't be
like going
possible.
back, right, again, going back to the show, this is like Dana saying, he comes to me in my dreams, like I see
Yes.
him.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't get over, I can't say it enough how well I think the show handled that, because
Mm-hmm.
it is so much clearer in this manner than what we get in the story, where it's like, well, this guy wrote some stuff, so we kind of think that. But in the show, it's like, no, this is cut dry, really easy to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as like whether or not half sealed or not sealed at all, so I was wondering like how does this happen? Because one of the questions that gets kind of thrown up around this whole situation is the fact that Ishamael has this encounter with Luz Theron, like from the part that you read from the prologue in Eye of the World, and this has happened after the sealing of the boar. So if the boar's already sealed, how is Ishamael there? And it actually, like when I was reading through stuff, I didn't really find a solid answer, but I found one I feel is a good answer from inside the Wheel of Time companion. And I'm just gonna read it if you don't mind real quick.
Yeah.
Ishamael at first believed that he had escaped the entrapment at Shale Ghul, and indeed he was free to move and confront Lucerne. That began driving him mad. He believed that the Dark One was sealed away again forever, and that he was left alive but without immortality in a world which was rapidly being destroyed. And it actually, like, it goes on to say that this is not the case, that he has escaped it, but only for a short period of time. And then the seals somehow just like suck him back in. Like that's basically what it says is like the seals at some point decide to absorb him back into the boar. But then it's like every 1,000 years or so, he shows up again for somewhere between 20 and 40 years and has this moment of being able to like wreak havoc in the
Mm-hmm.
Westlands to certain degrees of success.
Yeah, it's really hard to think about, like to envision, because visually, you want to look at it almost like a cave where the entrance and exit is blocked. Like you can't walk in or out, like you're stuck in there. But within the Wheel of Time, it's metaphysical. So it's like, it's not like a literal bore hole in the ground. It
Right.
is, almost think of it as like particles of energy or something, like
Yeah.
something being able to influence via dream almost. And we know Ishamael has his tricks. He can
Mhm.
show up in people's dreams for the most
Mhm.
part. So, like, is it almost just like he has this state of consciousness where he's like, okay, and then he's like reaching out for others, like feeling his way in the world, like via almost like telekinesis, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Where he can influence people that way. It's not like one day he's like, oh, the bore is open and goes
He
on a
just
little
strolls on out.
stroll.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then gets literally sucked back in. So
Yeah.
it's really hard for me anyways to visualize this.
Yes. It's in my head it's super like wispy and weird. Like he starts kind of like fading away and I'm melting. I'm melting. Like I don't know, like he just gets kind of like sucked back in somehow. Because I was like if he escaped the boar, but then we know that he shows back up again later. Did he die of natural causes? Is this the pattern pushing him back out? Is it the dark one releasing him? Like, how is this choice made? Or is it just kind of like an alarm every 1,000 years? The boar decides to like shake him out for a little bit and see what happens. Like, off you go.
Yeah, and I mean it's again, it's not like he's shaken out like
Right.
he I don't know. But I see exactly how you're saying it in my
Yeah.
head.
Right.
But
Like, thanks. I'm glad. Because it is one of those things that's a little like it's a little tricky to kind of grasp the whole concept about it. At least it is for me. Not and maybe not necessarily so much the concept of visualizing it is hard.
mhm. I'm, coming off of this 10-cent three body show
Mm-hmm.
where we're dealing with a lot of things like energy and matter
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it in this way of like energy almost being able to escape a certain area, it not being contained to a certain area. Like almost, I don't know, I'm almost thinking of like electricity or something. Like
Mm-hmm.
if he can somehow like reach out with his mind, I guess, like he's
Mm-hmm.
able to turn that lamp on in the world. And that's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a really, like, when I was reading all of this, I had that like epiphany moment where I was like, oh, this makes so much sense because
Ooh.
so we have, major upsets
Mm-hmm.
in the world within the Wheel of Time. The Trolloc Wars were a huge deal. This is what basically killed everyone in Manetherin and only
Mm-hmm.
left a few survivors. And, the whole makeup of the world had changed and moved, and nations were apart and then together and
Mm-hmm.
forming allies and really like fighting against this massive force of Trollocs and Shadowspawn wreaking havoc on the world like with
Mm-hmm.
no breath. Like it
Mm-hmm.
came in waves and waves, and the only chance of survival for everyone was pretty much to band together in
Yeah.
this point. And when that didn't happen, we're talking about massive casualties
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we have also the War of 100 Years.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
the scholar, Aaron, son of Malan, son of Sinar, we're attaching this theory of Ishamael, like being able to influence and touch the world, to
Mm-hmm.
so many of these big
Mm-hmm.
issues that have
Mm-hmm.
pretty much destroyed a peaceful time
Mm-hmm.
and has destroyed any chance of advancement in the world
Mm.
within the Wheel of Time. So
Mm-hmm.
why don't they have, we know in the Age of Legends, they had pretty much like flying vehicles. They
Mm-hmm.
had
Mm-hmm.
what we would consider like electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was really, really advanced more than what in our like real life, what we have.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it from the time of the Age of Legends all the way to the Eye of the World, they have not had any major advancement whatsoever?
Yeah.
Like, this is my theory. This is my big theory. Like, Ishamael knew that any type of advancement in this world
Mm-hmm.
would make it too easy for the side of the light just to decimate Trollocs
Yeah.
and Shadowspawn, these henchmen of the shadow. And like, like there's a good reason. Like you don't want if you're Ishamael, you don't want guns, you don't want cannons because those Trollocs aren't going to last up
Yeah.
against that. So if you
Yeah.
can keep wreaking havoc and putting a stop to any advancement, like
Mm-hmm.
that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking like 3,000 years in the Wheel of Time from
Yep.
like the Trolloc Wars to the current timeline, and there was nothing.
Nothing.
Like in our timeline, in like the past 2,000 years, we went
Mm.
from riding horses to reaching the moon.
Yeah.
And that was one thing within the series, within like the main series, that I always kind of had a problem with, where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I find that believable because humans are just, the rate of advancement is so exponential. And as soon as you figure one thing out, and then it's like boom, 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 and you're making giant leaps. And here it's like still riding horses and,
You know, like just
taking ships and no light bulbs. All right.
at at the same time though, I mean like the Egyptians existed, and I mean lots of groups of people existed for thousands of years without ever like reaching the advancements of technology that this current chapter of humanity has experienced. So perhaps like the proper combination of making that happen just hasn't really been fully in place until recently. Like I don't necessarily know like what all links up to like make us the society that we are.
I
However,
don't
I think that
I
that
don't
also
know.
points to Ishamael being a disruptive force of making sure that it doesn't happen. You know? Like if there are
Yeah.
factors to make it happen, there are definitely factors to make sure it does not happen. And he'd know.
I mean, even within the like the visual landscape of, let's, if we're even just talking about advancement in terms of like buildings,
Yeah.
like the Egyptians, like the
Yeah.
pyramids of Giza are a wonder of the world. Like they created some astonishing stuff. Like
Yes.
their
Truth.
knowledge of medicine
Mm-hmm.
and, I mean, embalming even,
Yeah.
like
Surgery.
within surgery,
Writing.
yeah. Yeah, in New Spring, we have people chewing up bread and using it as a poultice so that there's no infection. Like it's it's astonishing almost, and we don't even
Mm-hmm.
have, the only buildings that are like awe-inspiring within the Wheel of Time are the ones built by the Ogier and
Mm-hmm.
the people that can channel.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything else is just leftover from the Age of Legends when they were really advanced.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stone of Tyr, like we've got
Yeah.
some really incredible stuff, but within, the Third Age and before that, there's just
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of, there's not much going on.
And
People aren't really doing anything. They're just trying to make it by and shear
yeah.
their sheep and live simply.
Well, and I mean, Ishamael's purpose was to destabilize human civilization. Like,
Yeah.
success.
Betrayer of hope. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's in
if
the
you
name,
can't,
guys.
yeah, if you can't, if there's no advancement, there's no hope.
Yeah. 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 And that just like survival mode, getting through to the next day. Like,
Yeah. So,
can we talk about
the,
how he's a Dark One wannabe?
sure, but just before I move on from
Please.
this current topic here,
Yeah. Sorry.
there there's one quote that I found within the main series that I found. Just because Ishamael said it doesn't mean that it's true.
Right.
But there's a moment where he's confronted by someone, and Ishamael responds to that in anger. And the quote is, this person is saying, like this creed of like the Dark One and all the Forsaken are bound in Sheol Ghul. And Ishamael is like, fool, I have never been bound.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
you never know. Like, is it Ishamael just being his,
Braggadocious self.
yeah, is he just being like that, or is there like real weight behind it? And
Ooh.
I I feel like even him saying I have never been bound, you
Mm-hmm.
could say it like I've never been fully bound. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
always been able to influence, but not necessarily like I wasn't bound at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like part of it feels like it's just the reincarnation that occurs because of the wheel of time, because the pattern. But at the same time, he is attached to the boar, and like in all of this he is somehow sealed, it seems, but
Hmm.
maybe that's just the appearance, and maybe this is maybe this is his choice. Maybe he likes 1,000-year long naps.
I mean, if I had the choice to enjoy sleep.
Right? But I mean, it feels as though there's like a time limit put on how long he has to make his influence felt. Like
Hmm.
during the Trolloc Wars, like one of the things that I read was like he just barely had a chance to get that kicked off before he started fading away and being sucked back towards the boar again. But then also the same with his service to Arthur Hawkwing, where he was there and then realized he wouldn't be, and then starts like trying to fracture what Hawkwing has built up. I don't think he has a choice about how long he stays
Out
unsealed.
and about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On holiday, I don't know. Um it's really weird, but it's really interesting that he gets these like, I don't know, sabbaticals from the boar, like
Yeah.
little breaks, because none of the other Forsaken get this. It's just him. I mean, as far as we know of, none of the other Forsaken admit to being able to have this level of influence while they are sealed away.
Yeah. And two, he's one of the most powerful of the Forsaken in general. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that has something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I think what is it? Ravine is like the only one among the Forsaken that either
Yeah.
like come close or match him for power, and only Rand is listed as able to match him for strength.
Mhm.
So
So, spoilers
I'm down. I'm down.
then? Okay. So, if you have not
Yay!
read The Wheel of Time in its entirety, thanks for
Entirety.
listening. Yeah. And
Spoilers for the TV show too?
well, since we're in the spoiler section, I would say that covers everything.
Do you have a specific spot where you would like to start?
I think it's interesting looking at Ishamael's timeline in the Wheel of Time, how
Mm-hmm.
short-lived it is. I mean, he's built up to be this big baddie, so we see him, boom, very beginning, Eye of the World prologue, and then we see him last in chapter 55 of The Dragon Reborn, Heart
Yeah.
of Stone.
Mm-hmm. Turn to dust.
Yeah, Moraine kills Bilal, and then Rand kills Ishamael with Kalendor. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. See you later,
That's
Ishamael. It's been good to know ya. Like, apparently not that big of an
Thanks for
adversary for
playing.
Rand.
I mean, seriously,
Yeah,
Rand
like,
has defeated him every single time.
that also goes along with Ishamael's plan, though, I feel like, because
Ooh,
Ishamael isn't trying to kill Rand. He's not trying to kill the Dragon Reborn. He's trying to bring him to the other side.
that's true.
Hey, buddy, like, join me.
Let's hang out.
But again, like, not very smart if you want to live. You
Yeah.
keep getting wrecked by this sheep herder who has no idea what he's doing with the one power. Oh,
Well, and
Ishy.
and Ishamael is using the true power. I think one of the things that I read last night was that when Rand was going after him with Kalendor, Ishamael could not pull enough of the true power to be able to combat Rand's enhanced power with Kalendor. And so even with that, like he wasn't strong enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
That's true. But I will say, like, as far as the Ishamael timeline goes, we have, first two books, then he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
or no, the first three books, and then he's gone. And then in A Crown of
Mm-hmm.
Swords,
Mm-hmm.
we meet a new man.
He's a new man.
This new man, he's a bit of a dandy.
Right. I think it's Mogideon who observes that he's pretty enough that if it weren't for his chin, Grendel would want him for one of her pets. Tall, dark hair, striking blue eyes. Robert Jordan.
Yes.
Like in maybe mid-20s. Yep. So Moridin.
Moridin. So Moridin
Death.
is the re-spawning, the re-spinning of Ishamael, and he's got a new
Mm-hmm.
face, new body, new name.
New attitude.
Yeah, he does have a new attitude. So we
Mm-hmm.
have this moment in chapter 20 where we are introduced to a man. We don't get to learn who he is right away,
Mm-hmm.
but he's watching Samael and Grendel leave while arguing, and he learns that Samael is claiming to have a truce with Rand.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Samael, Grendel having a little bit of a quarrel right now, and they're fighting over who's going to become nameless.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is important
Guys.
for Moridin's story, Ishamael's story, because he does eventually become nameless.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the moment that he's introduced. So he's coming in at a time where all of the Forsaken are vying for Daddy's attention.
Do you feel as though there's like, I mean, first off, yes. Do you feel as though there's ever a time where you, as the reader, question that Ishamael is going to be nameless?
Honestly, I never really cared, so I never really thought about it. Like, the idea of the nameless just
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's bringing me back to Catholic school Bible studies where
Mm.
it's, like everybody wants to, in this case, like I'm talking about like Catholicism, like God. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to be on God's good side, right? Like
Right.
everybody's
Yeah.
like, I'm the best, like
Mm-hmm.
pick me.
Yeah.
I
Pay
want to go to
attention
the
to
happy
me. Me, me,
place.
me, 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 me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to go to the good place. So, like, pick me. I'm good.
Yeah.
And you can only get there by doing the things that, whoever's on top, whoever's in charge, you got to follow these orders and you got to do the best you can. So,
Yeah.
to me, Nameless was nothing other than the things that I learned having to go to Catholic school, but it's just
Huh.
flipped and it's like the side of, evil. It's the same
Yeah.
pecking order, the same, spiel. So I don't know. For Ishamael getting that, I think that fits, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, because
Mm-hmm.
specifically when he comes back as Moridin, you said he does have a new attitude. He has a new way of presenting himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the Forsaken as a whole, like they're all trying to climb over each other. And he kind of feels like outside of that in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Like above it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's almost everything that I read talked about how like calm he was and almost mechanical in going through the motions of getting things in place to where they needed to be so that he could just end it. Like he just wanted to end it. He wanted to end everything. Like his things that used to
He wanted
like
to end himself, even.
yeah, there's kind of a joke in a way of him being named Moridin because it translates into death. And like when I first read it, I was like, oh yeah, of course, to like show how deadly he is, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's more a joke where it's this is what you want and you will not get. He is brought back as his punishment. He's given life as a punishment because the Dark One knows he just wants to like end it all. It's just done.
It's his greatest wish to
Mm-hmm.
die so completely that he's
Mm-hmm.
not spun back into the pattern. So
Yep.
it's as though the Dark One knew this was his desire.
Yep.
So when he was considering this, it was like, no, I'm bringing you back. That's punishment. Some quotes from Moridin in general to like solidify this because we're told this, but like to hear it in his own words, I feel like makes you like believe how much like what his desire was.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this happens all the way at the very end of the series in A Memory for Light, chapter 4,
Mm-hmm.
where Rand's telling him, you hate yourself. I can feel it in you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you served him for power, and now you do it because his victory is an end to all things.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd rather not exist than continue to be you. You must know that he will not release you, not ever, not you. And then when they go back to this conversation, it's
Mm-hmm.
almost 20 chapters later. Moridin is laughing and he's like, now you beg me to return from the light. I have been promised oblivion, finally nothing, a destruction for my entire being, an end. You will not steal that from me, Luz Theron.
Mm-hmm.
By my grave, you will not. So, like, this is everything that he is striving for. Like, this is what is motivating him. And I would say
Mm-hmm.
this is his greatest cause of being who he is and how he is.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. Like nihilistic. Like you said at the beginning, he is nihilistic. But it's definitely like a massive influence on like what he does. Like there's some things that he does that are a bit baffling in the moment. And like the biggest one that jumps out to me is when they're at Shadar Lagoth and Rand and Moridin are there. And like this is actually like a big plot point where they both aim balefire at the mist of Shadar Lagoth, and they cross their beams and kind of like bounce back at each other. And from that
Mm-hmm.
point on, they're like connected in some way.
Yeah.
What is it? Like Rand becomes nauseous, like every time he reaches for the source, like.
Yeah, he's not sure at this point if it is the taint on Sidene or if it's something else, but
Yeah.
I think he's assuming it's just the taint on Sidene, and this is
Yeah.
one of the reasons he cleanses.
Sidene.
He
Yeah.
cleanses it,
Yeah.
but he doesn't know that not only is he starting to merge with Moridin via being able to feel him, but
Mm-hmm.
his thoughts and ideals start to merge with Rand a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like when Rand loses his hand, like from Semirog, like Moridin is pissed. Like he feels it, one, but he's also mad because now his adversary, like he's actually doing as many things as it seems possible for him to do and get away with it to make sure that Rand does get to the last battle. He doesn't want to
Hmm.
change his mind anymore. He just wants everything to end. And so he's like, I guess this is how it's going to go. One of them's going to win.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how within the story, this merging of the two take place and then how it becomes the big finale ending of the story, I guess. There's a moment in Crossroads of Twilights where Rand is thinking some things and
Mm-hmm.
he attributes it to Luz Theron, but in
Mm-hmm.
retrospect, I think it was Ishamael. And
Mm-hmm.
he's thinking that he says, did he think the Creator had decided to stretch out a merciful hand after 3,000 years of suffering? The Creator had made the world and then left humankind to make it of what they would, a heaven or the pit of doom by their choosing. The Creator had many worlds, watched each flower die and gone to make endless worlds beyond. A gardener did not weep for each blossom that fell. And
Mm.
then in parentheses, it says Luz Theron nods in approval. So, like, it's not Luz Theron's thoughts that he's thinking, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. It's actually Moridin's
Moridin.
thoughts.
Huh.
And so, like, the souls and the thoughts and the ideas are slowly combining, and it's just wild to think that all of that literally ends on Morden getting his wish,
Mm-hmm.
getting what he wanted,
Mm-hmm. Tricky.
like death, the true
Mm-hmm.
death.
Mm-hmm.
and Rand taking his body. Like the pulling of the souls together is such a weird thing in the series. Like there's only one other character that I can think of that happens to, where it's not like a where it's two human characters,
Mm-hmm.
like not like a Pot and Fane moment where he's a lot of different things and not all of them are quite human.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right. Yeah.
the Lord Luke Esam connection, like, is
Mm-hmm.
that similar to what happened with them? Like,
Mm.
I don't know. I don't understand how that would happen to Slayer. Has
Yeah.
to be, obviously some work of the shadow, but
It's a good question though. Like, how did two people become one person, but then still two people?
right?
How does that happen? How do their like brains, their souls, their bodies overlap to become one but carry both? I don't get it.
It's wild. That's one of those big like Slayer questions that I'm like, I'll never know, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
with Rand and Moridin, I think it is a fitting ending. I would say that it feels earned in the end. Like I thought it was a good ending. I
Mm-hmm.
like how that turns out.
Mm-hmm. It gives a balance. And I mean, I feel like I read somewhere that what allowed this to happen, this like swap of soul to body for Moridin and Rand, was that Moridin Ishamael was seeking death so desperately while Rand's soul was seeking life. And because they'd had that like balefire bounce back connection,
Hmm.
who's the channeler that's with them that helps with this? Because like she's the one that I think Min points out like way back in a viewing. Like there's going to be someone who will be there, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, I believe so. Now,
Yeah.
I don't have the name of her in my notes, but yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. And that's when the whole like they both balefire Mashadar at the same time.
Yeah. They cross the streams. Never cross the streams. Totally do. Ghostbusters moment. Yeah, so like the fact that like they were both in this way seeking and they had had this like weird connection. It's so like it's one of those things that you see set up in the book, and like for me, I wasn't necessarily expecting that. Like I knew that Rand somehow got to survive, but I didn't know how. And then when it happened and Moridin Rand in the Moridin suit like rides off into the sunset, leaving behind his like three women. I don't know how else to phrase it at the moment, apparently.
It is so
Um,
Western. It is such a
so
Western.
Western. So Western. Like,
The Wheel of Time is a Western.
totally
Don't
is.
at me. It's true. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but it's the truth.
I feel it. I feel it more and more as I read it. It just has like a weird Western vibe to it. Yeah. Olivia. Olivia is her name. Thank you. Thank you for your help, High Lord Tatara. I think in some ways it's anticlimactic. It's kind of an anticlimactic ending for Ishamael. Rest in peace, buddy. Thanks for playing.
I don't think so.
You don't
I
think so?
disagree. No,
Okay.
it feels completely fitting.
Yeah.
Ishamael, like, he came in with a whimper, like, really, and he went out with one too. Like, it's so fitting.
So he met your expectations?
Here's the thing, his whole search, his whole, like, want, the thing that he needed, the thing that he felt most, like, passionate about was dying. Like, he wanted this to end. Like, he was tired of rebirth and the respinning of the wheel. Like, he was just done with it all.
Yeah.
So, like, in that moment, when Rand and Moridin's souls are connected and the bodies become connected as well from the Balefire Cross, these two bodies, like these two souls, the one that wanted to live finds the body that wanted to live, and the soul that wanted to die doesn't go for that effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, to me, it was like Moridin just kind of, yeah, tapping out and being like, all right, like, this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing the image, the meme of like the little dog sipping coffee where it's like fire behind it. This is
Mm-hmm.
fine.
This
This
is
is
fine.
fine.
I love this.
It's
Yeah.
essentially like what he was aiming for. Not
Yeah.
exactly the same thing, but he got what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
This could have happened anywhere in this series, but we wait till the very end for this, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I don't know, like he's just this sad man that
Mm-hmm.
got what he wanted in the end. And I think it's poetic in a way,
Okay.
because for me, like, the big fight, the big battle between Rand and the Dark One slash Rand and Moridin, like on the side, because he's not really fighting the Dark One, but he's just running through the
Mm-hmm.
what ifs, what the world would look like without the Dark One, with
Yeah.
the Dark One. Like, kind of weird to, hard to explain, but
It's a choose your own adventure with the dark one.
yeah, yeah. But the big climax for me is the last battle in general, like the fighting that's out on the battlefields and what's going on with
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah.
actual like warring, like what's
Yes.
going on with Tam and
Mm-hmm. I love the
Andral and Matt
yes.
and
Ah,
just
Hinder's
like,
tap. Sorry.
yeah, there's so much
Ah.
happening there
Mm-hmm.
that it kind of makes sense that Rand and Moridin are in this battle of wills
Mm-hmm.
and spirit and souls,
Hmm.
because essentially like they are these two halves of the light and the dark. Like their fight doesn't need to be with swords, and I feel like that makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest, Rand only has one hand, so like he's not sword fighting anyone.
I mean,
Like,
it's not a bad swap, really. This guy is tall, he's handsome, he's well built, like he has two hands, no tattoos.
agreed. And yeah, it might be a little anticlimactic, but I feel like it's fitting and it makes sense. And I didn't mind that part, but at the same time, like it wasn't, those weren't the chapters that I was excited to keep going back to. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wanted, like take me back to the battlefield. I want to know what's
Yes.
going on with Tam and the
Mm-hmm.
archers, or
Mm-hmm. Where's Lan?
Elaine
Where's
or
Lan? Where's
Brigitte.
Lan?
Yeah, exactly. What's
Yeah.
Egwene doing over
Mm-hmm.
here? What
Oh
about
god, Egwene.
Brigida?
Oh
So like
god,
it's
Brigida. I'm
it's also
reliving it in my
fitting.
head right now. Oh god.
But it's fitting that like this soft spoken battle between Rand and Moridin is something like to the side, something almost intimate and almost quiet for that matter, because the story is just not about Randolph or the Dragon Reborn. Like
Yeah.
he's just this catalyst, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he kind of is the main character, and Moridin is in his own way as well, but
Yeah.
it's a fitting, way to go out, and it's almost peaceful,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate that.
I like that. I like that viewpoint. Instead of me just being like, that's it.
No, I totally get where people would be like,
I like your
I
viewpoint far better, and I can absolutely see it being like a poetic ending. Like it does have that feel to it. Where, I mean, in some ways, one of the things that makes it so fitting is like he's just faced the Dark One, who is supposed to have been his like big baddie, but at the same time, it's really Ishamael Moridin who has been his enemy number one, weird comrade
since
in
the
a way.
beginning.
Yeah, since
Yeah.
like the very beginning of the book. So it does make sense that they would like each choose their direction at this point at the end together to create a new beginning and seal an ending.
And that is all for this time. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you want more of these Wheel of Time episodes with me and Tracy. And we will see you next time.